Welcome to WYE, an LMC podcast all about you, the students here at LMC. I'm Lily Montero, and I'm the editor-in-chief of the LMC Experience. And this week, we're bringing you a conversation between one of our staff writers, A.R. Broom, and the director of LMC's most recent play, Nick Maccarone. In this conversation, they discuss the themes of the new play, Connected, about how even though we're all connected by the internet, we can all end up feeling really lonely or, as one might say, disconnected, pun intended. Just a quick note before we go into the recording, there is a bit of audio noise, so just stay with us. It's a good conversation. All right, enjoy.
Opening night was on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We had a 10 o'clock show. This is the fifth show.
The fifth show.
Yeah.
So it's definitely kind of smoothed out all the kinks with it. Or
you would think
still
that.
a lot of improvement to be had.
We're always trying to find ways to improve it. This show is so transition heavy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've noticed,
yeah.
right? I mean, it's just so specific that it's one of those things where you kind of put out one fire and then sometimes another one comes on. But I have to say, all things considered, they've done a tremendous job. Really incredible.
It seemed to flow pretty smoothly for the sheer number of scenes.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah. Well, we've worked almost as hard on the transitions as we've worked on the play itself. I mean, the transition is not its own thing. It is actually part of the play, so it has to be seamless.
Exactly.
The last thing you want is people getting fixated on a transition going wrong. It takes them right out of the play. So I really appreciate you saying that. Yeah.
So it's, the supporting crew, I think, really needs an emphasis. They will have to work so hard on something like this. And building the props, I mean, how often are we using the stages, having the triangular kind of really 6 sets? The ability to have 6 sets.
It's the first time I've even been a part of a production that has this exact format. You're right. There's a lot of literally moving parts, right?
Yeah.
Quite literally. I mean, you take this, even that room, for example, just that single room, we're taking down one picture, putting up 3 others. And
changing the whole layout of the bed.
That's exactly right.
Different pillows, different blankets and coverings there.
Changing the sheets constantly. This is
the posters here, the circles wasn't.
That's exactly right.
That was the library prior to that.
That's exactly right. Even on the bleachers, it's like swapping out the posters.
Yeah.
The only thing that stays somewhat static is Sharon's room. Thankfully, there's not a ton of things that happen in that room.
And no night vision goggles, nothing like that happening.
There's a little bit of a transition light, but you actually see there are some glow sticks over there.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And we had to put those in last minute because the actors are saying, "Look, we literally can't see anything."
Hit the marks and stuff like that.
Yeah. So it is, as you notice, it is quite dark back there.
It is.
So yeah. But it's tricky because you want them to be able to help people that are moving things, but at the same time, they can't draw too much attention, draw too much focus. So, but they've done a tremendous job. And actually, Alex over here, who's not only the sort of lead stagehand, but she's also in the show. So she's wearing several hats at once. So it's pretty impressive. Yeah.
And the production really allows, for the whole cast to have their own shining moment, it seems, which, as a drama program, must be a fantastic opportunity for all of the students.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. I was given sort of the opportunity to Nick Garcia, who's been wonderful to me, and he gave me an opportunity to direct the show. And he said, "You pick the show," and he said, "I would recommend that you pick something that's socially topical, something relevant, and can get a lot of people on the show." It's not easy to strike that balance, and so this particular production, thankfully, as you can see, is a pretty big cast, and I think more importantly, it's super relevant. I think I've had a couple friends that have come to the show and say, "Look, the issue of people tweeting and texting and being on Facebook and social media has really kind of taken the place of real social interaction." And I think as a result, we've lost the ability to really communicate, to listen. I think our sense of empathy has gone down, and actually depression has gone significantly up. And I think I mentioned this in the article that I wrote for the program, that's incredibly ironic is one of the highest teenage suicide rates is in Palo Alto, which is the
heart of
the pulsating heart of Silicon Valley, which is both incredibly tragic and ironic at the same time. So this is, I don't think it's hyperbole to say that this is really an epidemic. This is a crisis. It's a public health issue. people just don't know how to interact with each other anymore, it seems, or at least that the quality of the listening has really gone down. So we showed the production to a group of high school students this morning.
I was going to ask, is it targeted? It's not very subdued, the dialogue, and the prose really makes it known that this is an issue, and especially the portion with the geometry teacher is talking about how much time it takes to develop interpersonal relationships with friends or even lovers.
Yeah.
Is that targeted towards high school students who may not have that ability to critically think about it?
That's a really good question. You know what's really interesting about that is I think that it's actually relevant to high school kids because you and I have both seen probably our parents pull out their phone at the wrong time, and it's pretty pervasive actually. I think it's especially difficult for the younger generations because they've never known anything else. At least my generation, I'm in my late 30s now, and so I grew up before Facebook, before smartphones, and so I know I have something to compare it to, and so I think that, for me, I try to be pretty disciplined about it. My phone is on airplane mode the majority of the day. I don't keep my phone in the same room that I sleep in when I go at night, and so I've set up an environment where it's easier for me to avoid it. But
you have boundaries.
I try, yeah. I'm also I can actually relate to some degree to the character that Jason plays, where I think probably has to do with age, but I'm not super concerned with what somebody else is doing or eating or where they're, it's wonderful that they're doing those things, but I'm not consumed by those things. But I think that high school kids in particular, I'm glad that they came to see the show because I think it's especially relevant to that audience. But even college kids and I'm listening to an interview before I came into the production this morning, and a leadership expert was saying that what's happening, especially with millennials, is they are totally misinterpreted. They are young and ambitious, and there's nothing wrong with them. They've just grown up in a generation where they've known no different, and then they work for companies that are not nourishing or taking care of them. So I think it's a big problem. But there's little things that you can do. You can leave your phone at home when you go out and meet with a friend. Statistically speaking, when you take your phone and you put it on, like if you and I went out for coffee and I put it on the table, you statistically are less empathetic.
So I feel like you definitely are going to look more at the phone.
That's exactly right.
Wait for that to bring up a conversation topic or something like that.
Another thing you can do at a party or at a function is you can tell everyone to pass their phone to the person to the left. So you're holding someone else's phone, so you're not going to check it. So there's little things that you can create an environment where it's easier for you to succeed because discipline wanes over time. We're all going to succumb to that. So if you create an environment where you can succeed, but that's just been my take.
So is Garcia the department chair?
Yeah, Nick Garcia is the department head. Yeah.
He's notorious for his no phone policy. So how did this play kind of? Did he immediately, once reading, I imagine, the script or the idea of the play?
It's funny.
Was he fond of it?
Well, he and I didn't talk in too much detail about it. I think when after I sent him the script, and I think it was a thumbs up. It's funny that you say it, we haven't had a super extensive dialogue about it, but he's come to see the show, and I think he's really impressed by the cast and what they've done. So, but that's a really good question. He and I should probably have a more philosophical conversation about it.
Yeah. So, I believe, is there a class going on right now with the philosophy department and the drama instructors with Edward Haven?
That's a good question. I don't know. I
teach. I might have heard something like that.
Because
there's kind of a duty, it seems, that you have to share these social kind of issues.
Yeah.
With the audience and not make it just. I don't know if that's a department thing or not make it just entertaining or.
Pedantic, yeah. Right. I think you're right. What's cool about this play, and I totally agree with what you just said, is that this play talks about a really important social issue through humor and through a heartbreakingly honest lens. If you go to a play and someone is just beating you over the head with a message, you're totally going to tune out because I mean, I know for me, if I go see a film that has a quote-unquote message and they're just hammering it away, I feel like the filmmaker or the artist is not respecting my intelligence or ability to come up with a conclusion on my own. So if you have a play with a message, quote-unquote, you've got to be very skillful with how you deliver it. So my sense is that I think you should try to entertain first, and I think the message should be a byproduct of that, if you lead with that. Because I'm sure you've probably seen some films or some theater where you just kind of felt like it was a PSA announcement, and you
they even use that as a medium in high school and certainly in middle school for sex education and other endeavors to try and make it less awkward to get that message out.
Well, you have to know your audience too.
You do.
In order to persuade, you have to know your audience, and you have to know what they value and what their principles are. This play probably wouldn't do particularly well in a more conservative town, but thankfully we're here in the Bay Area where
very progressive
and diverse, and I think not afraid to talk about things that are hard to talk about.
And with respect to the playwright Leah Romero, was the Bay Area considered as an audience? What is her background?
It's funny that you asked that. I know she went to Princeton and she went to Rutgers, and she actually was the roommate of a very good friend of mine who's an actor who I've collaborated with. And I told that friend that I was doing this play, and she said, Leah, I used to live with Leah. So
just casually.
Yeah, and you saw in her director's note in the program that she clearly has a sense of humor about what it means to be a playwright in 2019. Not particularly lucrative, and you have to do it because you really want to do it, like any artist, I suppose. But I say that she has a great ear for dialogue and language, especially for she's writing. Presumably, she's my age or maybe a little bit younger, and so she's writing for people quite a bit younger than her, and so that's pretty that is not insignificant. And you probably noticed some of the pop culture references might be a little.
I was gonna lead into that next question. Do you think going after Facebook is too easy? The low-hanging fruit, rather. These days, it seems like the older generations are actually using, generations older than really my parents' age just seem to be using it more often than anyone now. Where Twitter and Instagram and perhaps not even Snapchat as much.
I can't even keep up. I don't even. What is the thing right now that you think everyone's on?
Still Instagram.
Instagram, okay. Yeah, and they've probably added some bells and whistles to that since I first got on there. That's a good question. I think that I don't think, first off, I do want to say that I don't know if she's trying to demonize Facebook. I think there's a lot of wonderful things about Facebook, to get back in touch with somebody that you knew back in the day and cultivate a deeper friendship. But sometimes you have to go for the low-hanging fruit because it's
what everyone can relate to.
It's what everyone can relate to. It's what people value. It's and so it's sort of in harmony with. And it's in a language that everybody understands. But you're right. I mean, but to your point, I mean, this was written a couple years ago, and you and I are sitting here talking about how much things have changed just in that amount of time. I mean, it's really unbelievable. It's very difficult to keep up. I heard Eric Schmidt, who used to be the CEO of Google, he said that every day we double the amount of information that's been recorded in world history up to 2002. I mean, every day. So now it's not about your ability to find information, it's about your ability to sort through it, which might be even harder.
If you were to update the script, it almost seems these days that, say, vlogging, YouTube, stuff like that, people aren't so much as even connecting with each other over social media, but just observing the lives of others.
I heard about this. Yeah.
Would you perhaps, if you were to update the script, include something like that?
That's an interesting thing, because I was talking to somebody who had young children, and she was saying that our generation, her generation, growing up, you'd go out and you'd play baseball or you'd go watch baseball, and that was your thing. She's saying that now what kids do is they literally watch other kids play games rather than go out and play themselves, and I just thought that was crazy. So, if I informed myself enough about that, I think you're absolutely right. I think that'd be a sort of a worthy revision. I think a lot of the stuff is still pretty topical that's in the play, but But yeah, I mean, yeah, I think another thing that I would have maybe brought into play is dwindling attention spans.
I mean, that's what the war is over these days. Is how
Yeah.
much attention can you get from someone, because that's where the advertising money is, in the advertising industry is in the hundreds of billions of dollars per year.
Absolutely.
At this point.
Well, I heard that we are interrupted on average every 3 minutes, and it takes about 11 minutes to get your focus back. So that's not very good math, right? And then we lose supposedly over $100 billion in lost production because people are distracted. And then the common myth that you can multitask, which is impossible. You can't actually multitask. I mean, you can physically do two things at once, like drive and talk to somebody, but if you're talking to me and you're texting, you're actually
Your attention is
you're going back
back
and
and
forth. And it's actually statistically, I think it's the equivalent of being, like legally drunk or something, or high or something like that. So,
In terms of danger rate, or
yeah. So people aren't as skilled as they used to be. But I have to say that the biggest theme in the play to me is the one of loneliness. I think one of my favorite scenes in the play is the very last one with Miss Haverhill and Jarrett, and it's just heartbreaking. And I think the point that Miss Haverhill has is that you have to put the effort in, but nobody really wants to. And I think one of the reasons people don't want to anymore is because they want things to happen so quickly. And so they forget what it's like to put in the effort and to put in the work. And so you've just kind of been spoiled with all the options that we have. And it's kind of like how you can go find something out on Google right now. So we're all about finding the answers, but we've lost the ability to think and to come up with the answers for ourselves. So I think something's been lost. I feel like we've just sort of skipped this step, and not to sound. It does concern me. I mean, it does concern me. I think about it quite a bit. Just the quality of our listening on our interactions. Yeah.
I really hope you enjoyed this episode. It's a little bit different than what we usually do here at WYE, but it's a good conversation, and maybe you'll spend some time thinking about your relationship with the internet and social media in particular. This is the part of the podcast where I send out all of my thanks. First, I'd like to just thank you, the listeners, for continuing with us on this journey. This is a new podcast, and so we're still working out the kinks, and we'll get there. Second, I'd like to just thank Broom for the audio recording. It is definitely a good conversation, so thank you for that. And of course, as usual, special thanks to Julia Steele for the beautiful intro and outro music of this episode. All right, guys, till the next experience.